Hello friends, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my relatively new Beretta 92A1. I've shot about 1,000 rounds through it and I feel like I'm getting a very good impression of how I like this gun. But first, a little bit of obligatory information about Beretta the company. As far as I know, Beretta is the oldest active firearms manufacturer. In 1526, they manufactured arquebus barrels, and in 1571, they equipped the Venetian Navy with cannon barrels at the Battle of Lepanto. At the Battle of Lepanto, the Venetian Republic, the Spanish Empire, and the Holy League faced off against the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans did not fare well. Just for your information, the Holy League was a Catholic Mediterranean confederation consisting of a lot of the states in the area, like Genoa, Parma, Savoy, etc. And again, the Ottomans did not fare well against those combined naval arms. When we look at the Beretta, I think the first thing that we notice is the open top slide. I feel like that's kind of the signature look of Berettas. Going back a ways, I think really kind of for the last century, a lot of their guns have had that open top slide, going back to the Model 34 and the 51 a bit later. Though I think those earlier guns were blowback models, so I don't think they have a lot in common with the actual operating principle of this gun. I think that the similarities are largely aesthetic, but what a beautiful aesthetic. I think we can all agree that Berettas are lovely, lovely guns. Beretta says that the open top slide enhances the gun's reliability. It lets the bullet feed straight into the chamber. It's a bit different than the Browning tilting barrel design, where the barrel tilts down and the bullet kind of feeds up into it. I don't know if it really makes the gun that much more reliable. It certainly could. I have not experienced any malfunctions whatsoever. This gun has run extremely well. I trust it readily, but more on that later. Beretta also says that it aids ejecting. It certainly might. I think this way the cartridge can kind of leave the gun however it needs to, versus just leaving on one side or the other with the Browning design. You know, I'm not a firearms designer, but everything has worked exactly as it should. I definitely think very highly of this gun, and if Beretta says that makes it feed correctly, well, who am I to say otherwise? It certainly worked well. As far as the features of this gun, other than the lovely open top slide, if we can really call that a feature, but I think since it adds so much to the beauty of the gun, we'll call it a feature. Aesthetics matter, right? If a gun's ugly, you're not going to want to pick it up and shoot it. You know, I say make a gun as beautiful as you possibly can. So we've got our accessory rail here, which I find both attractive and functional. We have our rounded trigger guard. A lot of the Beretta 92 series have the kind of squared off trigger front, so that you could kind of use your 1980s action hero grip with the index finger of your offhand up on the trigger guard. Modern doctrine, I don't really think a lot of people are still doing that, though of course there's nothing wrong with that if you are. But as such, we get to enjoy this more modern looking rounded trigger guard, although I think the older Berettas actually had the rounded guard. Maybe the Army said that they wanted the straight front for the M9s or something. I don't know, but I think it's a feature. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love it. This gun has a removable front sight in that dovetail. A lot of Berettas, the front sight is part of the slide, so if you want to have night sights put on, you have to actually have the front sight milled out. I don't like that. It's probably expensive to have done. I've never had a gunsmith quote me, but I can't imagine it being too inexpensive. And now I can just go and get some Meprolites, which I plan to do, and put them on the gun, and bam, night sights and no milling required. I think that's great, and kind of brings the Beretta even further into the present day. I think that's great. So this gun also has a recoil buffer inside of it, and it also has a captive recoil spring. The recoil buffer definitely works. I'm not sure that it was entirely necessary, as I've never really thought of Berettas as having excessive recoil. None of the other ones that I've shot have had anything resembling excessive recoil. In fact, I found them very pleasant and soft to shoot, but it's nice knowing that it's there, and it certainly does work. Recoil is now fairly minimal for this gun in my hands. And the captive recoil spring, I find it very convenient because I don't have to chase springs around. I know some of you will probably not be too happy about that, especially since it comes with a plastic guide rod. I've not had any problems with it, and it doesn't bother me either way. I've had lots of guns with plastic guide rods, and they've been completely fine also. I don't consider that a problem at all. And again, it beats chasing a spring across the range, or if you're outdoors, chasing the spring into the forest and never finding it again. We've all done that, am I right? You also get 3 lovely magazines. I think that every manufacturer should include 3 magazines. I really, 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 really like that. There's nothing worse than, buying a really expensive gun and then you look in the box and you go, and now I've got to go fork over another 30 or 40 bucks for a 3rd, 4th, 5th magazines. Having that extra one, I like that Beretta. Thank you very much. One last thing that I'm not sure a lot of people would call a feature, but I think it's certainly very cool. This gun is actually built on the 40 frame. So most guns are, you see 90s, or 90s, you see 9mm that are made to accept the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. This is done in reverse. So this gun, since it is a 40 Smith & Wesson gun, that is made to fit 9mm. The gun is built so robustly. It is a tank. It's nice and heavy and well built. It just oozes quality. It's fantastic. I also figured while we're at it, let's take a look at the recoil buffer and captive recoil spring. Let's just take a look at that. I want you to see the quality of the inside of the gun. It's very well put together. All right, so in case you've never seen the way a Beretta is taken apart, it's also lovely. One could say that the ease of disassembly is also a feature. We are going to press this little button here with our index finger, rotate this thingamajig down like so, and oh yeah, the slide just kind of pops off there. I like it. So we'll set that aside. Here is our captive recoil spring. So, like I said, I've shot about 1,000 rounds through this. I haven't been particularly nice to the gun. In fact, more on that later. See, it's in great shape, besides being a little dirty. Yeah, works just fine. I'm not going to hesitate to trust my life to it personally. And there is our recoil buffer, that little blue thing. And it definitely does work. It's not hype. There is definitely reduced recoil versus other Berettas that I've shot. Although that could be just due to the weight and robustness of this pistol. It is extremely well built and hefty, which I consider to be a plus. I don't mind a heavy gun. This also gives me a chance to use the decocker. Yeah, look at that. Quality. I love it. All right, so some of the competitors to this gun. Let me tell you about why I selected this over those guns. I would consider its competitors to be, the SIG 226, the Browning High Power, and the CZ75. Those are, some older guns that are all metal. Oh, actually, I forgot a feature very quickly before I continue that relates to this gun being all metal. So the only plastic component, Beretta says, besides the guide rod, and which is present on most of their newer guns. Besides the guide rod, the recoil buffer, and the magazine release, those are the only plastic parts. Everything else is made out of metal. And some of the other Berettas, like the trigger is plastic and stuff, and that's fine. But this having more metal parts, it adds to the feeling of quality that you get when you pick it up. I'm really glad that I got the 92A1 over some of the others. So compared to the SIG 226, the Browning High Power, the CZ75, those are all pretty similar metal double action, single action guns. I largely bought this one over those just because of how it fits my hand. I have kind of medium-sized hands. The SIG feels a little fat, and I know what you're thinking. The Beretta is hilariously fat. I do understand that. The SIG is probably actually less fat, but the Beretta is just, it's fat in all the right places. It just fits my hand perfectly. I love it. It feels almost like it was kind of made for me in its own way. Not as much as some other things like the Walther PPQ, but this gun's also 40 years old. This is about as ergonomic as they come from that era, I think. And over the Browning High Power, the Browning High Power has the magazine safety. I love the high power, but I'm not super keen on that. And the CZ75, well, I don't know. I'd like to have one of those too, actually. So really, the fit is kind of it for me, and I also like the trigger on the Beretta a great deal. And the sights work well for me. It was just the right choice for me. In the polymer realm of the newer things, I understand this is not a polymer gun, but in a way, some of the polymer double action, single action guns like the USP, the FNX9, the HKP30, those sorts of things, do in the end up competing with this pistol. And I chose this one over those for similar reasons, just the way it fits my hand, and I really like the trigger. But whenever gun comparisons come up, there's one thing that I should mention. I like buying guns. I like shooting guns. I like buying and shooting a large variety of different guns. I either have or will probably purchase a lot of those other guns that I mentioned. I just like shooting different things on different days. So I feel like just because I bought the M9, that doesn't exclude any of those other things. In fact, in the next 5 years, I'll probably buy and sell everything on that list. I'll purchase it and then go back to the gun store 6 months later and say, hey, I've had a great time with this. I'm ready to trade her in for something new and different. I just think guns are cool. I think that the personality of each gun kind of makes it what it is, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't feel like this gun is necessarily better or worse than any of those. I just happen to find this most interesting at this time, so that's why I got it. Although I have to tell you, I like this gun so much that it is probably not going to be one of the ones that I end up trading towards something else later. You know how it goes. When you get a new gun, you kind of always know. I'm either keeping this one for life, this will become an heirloom, or not. This one will be an heirloom. So why did I choose this Beretta over other Berettas? Well, I've shot the 92 FS and the regular M9, not the A1, but the regular M9 on many occasions. I like this gun a bit better. The fit and finish on it are superior to some of the ones that I've handled, and I know that those were older models that had been shot a lot, so that could have been part of it. I felt like I couldn't deal with the inability to change the front sight without milling it. That was a deal breaker for me. I couldn't deal with that. So really, that kind of only left a few models after that. I think that the M9A3 is one I'll probably get to have alongside this. I feel like it has enough differences that it would be a great one to own. But I would own it concurrently with this one, not necessarily instead of. But I do feel like this pistol in some ways does have an edge over the M9 and the 92 FS. The accessory rail is a big deal. The M9A1, it lacks, as far as I know, I could be wrong, the recoil buffer, and it has the square trigger guard, and I think it has more plastic components, which are probably fine, but this one didn't cost much more, and it did feel a bit better to me in my hand. And I did shoot the M9A1 before I bought this one. I just liked this gun a bit more in my hand. So that's why I bought it over other Berettas, and over the PX4, I think I bought this one just because I wanted an M9 or 92 style pistol more than something with the rotating barrel. This to me is sort of the quintessential Beretta, and it was the right one for me. So, how does it feel, and how does it shoot? I mentioned the way it fits my hand is lovely. It's great. So it feels fantastic. It points very, very naturally. The grip angle is excellent. The way my fingers fit on the gun, it's marvelous. It's tough to beat. It feels great. The trigger is excellent. The double action pull is really long. It's really long and it's a little stiff, but for a combat gun like this, I don't really consider that to be a negative. It just is. It's very safe that way, certainly. In fact, let's take a look at that, shall we? So we've all seen that it's unloaded, although I don't know why I'm telling you that. I don't know how I could shoot you through YouTube. Although at the same time, I'm very grateful for your concern for my personal safety. All right, here we go. Yeah, pretty long, right? But it's pretty smooth. So though it's long and kind of stiff, it's smooth, and therefore I don't hate it. It's not like some other double action pulls where you just absolutely dread even having to do it. It's really not like that. But the single action, check this out. Oh yes. Oh yes, that feels great. I love it. It's so satisfying. Okay, so got some travel back, some take up. Then we kind of hit our wall there. And the wall's a little spongy, but it feels really good. It feels kind of slick and smooth, like everything else about the gun, even the decocker. I really, really, really like it. The sights are fantastic. People have said that they're small. They are small, but they're also very precise as a result. The smallness does not bother me one bit. I find that the sights lead to me shooting it really well. I will probably put night sights on there, but other than that, I wouldn't change much. I really like the dots. The magazine release feels really good. It's in such a place where you're probably not going to hit it by accident, and it feels very positive, as they say. It doesn't shoot the magazines out of it with much force, which I like. It makes it so that they just fall free just like they should. They don't shoot out of the gun like they do on some others. I really, really like that. Again, it feels very slick and just perfect, you could say. What would I change about it? Well, I talked to you a bit about the sights. I'm going to put night sights on it, and I'm probably going to put the decocker only on it, the G setup. I'm not going to do that because I necessarily hate the safety. I just wouldn't use it. I don't really use safeties on guns. My finger is my safety. I don't really need that to be there. So I will probably make it decocker only. But that said, the safety has not gotten in the way. A lot of people say that they accidentally engage the safety when trying to manipulate the slide. I have had no problems with that occurring. That has not happened to me yet. Maybe I've been lucky, but that hasn't been an issue at all. So definitely something to look out for, I suppose, but I do want you to know it hasn't been a big concern for me. What will I do with this gun? Well, this is my home defense pistol at the moment. I shoot it pretty well as I can shoot anything, which is really not that well, but I feel very comfortable with it being my home defense gun. And that's not just because it's new. I just feel a sense of comfort when it's around. It feels very hefty and feels like it could also be used as an effective bludgeon if you ran out of ammo and we're still being assailed. I also am using it as my home defense gun because I have not experienced any malfunctions with it. That brings me to something very important. So I was told that this gun would be unreliable. Several people told me not to purchase it. They said I would have nothing but problems, that it would jam constantly. It was very ammo, its performance was very ammo dependent. I haven't experienced any of those problems. Not a jam. It's been perfectly 100% reliable. In fact, I have run the gun dry with absolutely no lubricant for 200 rounds. No problems whatsoever. I have not cleaned it in, I don't know, I've not cleaned it in 600 rounds, I think. No malfunctions. And as you can see, or as you saw when I had the gun open and on the magazines, this gun is filthy right now. And you know what? I'm not going to clean it now. I kind of want to see how long it'll go before it jams. In fact, I have a suspicion that before it jams, I will probably get tired of looking at how dirty it is and just clean it before it has any problems. it just doesn't strike me as the kind of gun that's gonna have any issues. My personal feelings about it, you've probably gotten the sense throughout this review that I am in love with this gun. It probably seems like I'm sort of perhaps carnally attracted to it, and perhaps I am. It's a lovely device. But no, in all seriousness, this is one of the finest guns I've ever owned. It's incredibly cool to look at. It's incredibly fun to use. It's utterly reliable. And while I understand that in the minds of many, this gun is very antiquated, and perhaps seen as, the sort of thing that only, someone who plays shooty video games would want to buy. But it's a classic. It's an American classic, despite the fact that it's made in Italy, and this model is made in Italy. The Beretta 92 is an American classic. It's served our men and women in uniform for many years, and even with the changeover to the SIG, it's not like these are going to be instantly pulled from service. It will continue to serve the folks in our armed forces for many years to come, undoubtedly. And it's a damn fine gun. I've always wanted one, and I have a feeling that it's going to give me years and years of happy service, and I'm excited to add it to my collection. And with only 1,000 rounds through it, I feel like I've got to take it out and shoot it some more. I'll give you an update again maybe when I get to 2,000 rounds or 3 or 4 or 5, which at the rate I've been going with this thing, it probably won't be too terribly long. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope this has been somewhat informative to you at least. I'm certainly no expert, just a guy who really likes his Beretta. But there will be more reviews coming from me soon. In fact, I may upload a few more this week or the week after. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all soon.